Ryan Fannon in Louisville at the KFC Yum Center. He joins us now with a look at that game. I said this morning, Ryan, that if you've never seen a college basketball game and you want to watch one to try to hook you, tomorrow's game might be the one to watch. I love the matchup because these two teams both have upperclassmen that really lead the way, and I think that's why they're so good right now.
First of all, I think anytime you get an opportunity to play a program like Kansas, you look at a coaching matchup of Self versus Wright. You look at the fact that this team, Kansas, has won 17 in a row. They are the overall number one seed, and they have been the best team in the country this year over the long haul. And then you have a Villanova team right now that has caught fire in the tournament. They've won by 72 points in 3 games, an average margin of victory of 24 a game. Everything they throw up is going in. And you look at this matchup and you just say exactly what you just said. I mean, this game, I hope it lives up to 70% as good as it is on paper, because it is off the charts on the paper right now looking at this matchup.
It really is. And talk a little bit about that, though. The game has changed so much. The upperclassmen don't play. This is rare that two programs of this magnitude have upperclassmen. Typically, you'll see the mid-majors coming in with the upperclassmen because, you know, they're not getting the high-profile guys that are going to the NBA. But to have a 1 and a 2 seed littered with upperclassmen makes these two teams so tough and so dangerous this time of the year.
Really, really does. When you talk about just veterans, and you know, all year there was a lot of national publicity about the fact that this was the year of the senior in college basketball. I mean, we talked so much about freshmen for so many years and all the impact they make, and then they leave for the NBA. But I love years like this because it's really what college basketball was about. When I was growing up in the early '80s, watching Ralph Sampson and the whole ACC back in the day. Before I went to Villanova undergrad in the late 80s, and you really appreciated watching a guy go from his freshman to sophomore, and then by his junior year, the name notoriety that you had of these players, and you knew, oh my goodness, I get to watch this guy for another year and a half by the halfway through his junior year, and you don't get to see that much. And then when you see this team of Kansas, and you look at their starters, and in the backcourt, you know, they got a couple junior starters, and up front, Lucas is a senior, and a junior, and Perry Ellis is a senior, and they're such a veteran ball club. You look at Villanova, I mean, Chris Jenkins and Hart, I mean, they might as well be seniors now. I mean, those guys, I mean, they've won at an incredible level in their 3 years, and they're two big leaders on this team. But then you talk about Arcidiacono and Ochefu, I mean, they're the winningest class in Villanova history. They've done everything except make a run in the tournament, and now they've done that. I mean, we all know when you get to the Elite Eight, you've made a run. Now the question is, can they make history?
When you mentioned they've caught fire, at some point that wears out. Is there a concern? I mean, that this team just runs out of lighting it up. Is that the one thing that would worry you if you're enjoying this run right now for Villanova?
I would say that that's the thing that I probably actually am most encouraged about is we don't have to make 3 to win. And I think a lot of folks nationally that didn't really watch this team didn't understand that when Villanova got beat bad by Oklahoma back in December and lost to UVA in Charlottesville, they learned a lot from those games. And one of the things this team can do, I think, even better than last year's Villanova team that was terrific, went 33-3, of course, most wins in school history, but lost to NC State, is, you know, you've got to be able to win in a lot of ways. And when you look at our personnel now, Ochefu gets it in the low blocks. He'll finish with the hook shot. Josh Hart can score anywhere on the floor. The biggest reason Villanova has gone to the next level, in my opinion, more than anything, is Chris Jenkins. His game and his in-season development as a player, I've never seen in the 25 years I've been around Villanova. This kid is an absolute star, and midway through January of his junior year, he was a player that had a very good stroke, that was an inconsistent shooter, and did not have a full, complete game. And now he does everything for Villanova, and he's changed Villanova into a legitimate national championship contender, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's we were having a conversation last night about this particular team, and there's been great stars throughout the last couple of years, going back to early, for a long time at Villanova. But we were just throwing some names around, the Kittles and Tim Thomases and Scotty Reynolds of recent time. But is there a player on this team that is on that level that you think is a guy that we're going to look back and say that era of Villanova basketball and that guy's name will always come up?
I think it's going to be Ryan Arcidiacono, and I'll tell you why. I think the background on him, his dad played football at Villanova, his mom's a Villanova grad. He loved Villanova his whole life, and when he got a chance to put that jersey on as a freshman, Villanova was coming off a 13-19 season, and Jay Wright did something he's never done in his 15 years. He named a freshman a captain at Villanova. And now I've watched Ryan Arcidiacono become not only the only player in Villanova history to score over 1,500 points and have over 500 assists in his career. Nobody's ever done that combination. But 114 wins, the most wins of senior class in Villanova history. Now they got the run. But what he does behind the scenes to set the tone and to get this team ready to play night in and night out, I've not seen anything like it. I mean, this kid is the most focused, locked-in, competitive kid. The only player, John Haynes back in 95, was an unbelievable competitor. He would just be devastated if Villanova would lose. It meant that much to him. In terms of pure competitiveness, I put Arcidiacono, Kyle Lowry, John Haynes, those three guys in terms of sheer will to win. And that's the thing right now I feel about Arcidiacono. That kid is going to do anything to win the game. And when you have a guy like that, you just feel confident they're going to find a way to win.
Ryan Fannon's the voice of the Villanova Wildcats. Tomorrow night they play Kansas. 8:50 is the tip. Perry Ellis, 27 points, 17 in a row, as you've mentioned. Give us your thoughts on how the Cats match up with this Kansas team that, they've lost some games this year. It's not like they're one of those standout, no doubt about it, number ones. This field is wide open, but they're probably the favorite in this particular field. But what about Kansas? How do they match up with the Cats?
Well, first of all, an interesting matchup to look at tomorrow night is Perry Ellis, who's a stretch four, against Chris Jenkins, for us, who's a stretch four, and that should be a very intriguing matchup right there. I think you've got great guard play on both sides. Frank Mason, Wayne Selden Jr., and Devontae Graham. They're not really big. I mean, Graham's only 6'2", and Mason's 5'11". Selden's more of that athlete, shot clock late that can go get a shot. So I'm very impressed with just their athleticism at those three guard positions. But to me, Perry Ellis, his ability to score anywhere and everywhere on the court, he reminds me of Josh Hart for us. Josh Hart's our leading scorer. And there's been so many storylines about Arcidiacono, and I mentioned about Jenkins, but really, they're going to struggle guarding Josh Hart. And on the flip side, it's going to be a great challenge against Perry Ellis. Just watching him, the confidence he plays, how smooth his game is, him coming back for his senior year and not going to the NBA draft where he probably would have been a second rounder, has just made this Kansas team a complete team. And, their offensive efficiency, their defensive efficiency, you've got basically, in terms of those two stats, these two teams are as good as anybody in the country when it comes to getting it done on both ends of the floor.
Ryan, did they feel a little slighted when they got their seeding? They've scored 85 points in all three games, 85 or more in all three games. Did they have a little chip?
Well, I think the whole thing with Philadelphia, Villanova not being the one seed in the East, to me, it was very clear, in my opinion. If Villanova had beaten Seton Hall and won the regular season outright title, which they did, and won the Big East tournament, they would have been the number one seed in the East. But when they lost to Seton Hall, it opened up the door where I think the committee thought, wow, we're going to give Carolina a one seed, and we're going to put Villanova as a two seed playing in their back door, in their backyard, in a potential Elite Eight game. That's maybe not fair to North Carolina. I thought Villanova, to be honest, deserved to be the two in the East, because when they dropped off the one line, you got to look at the fact on an S curve, they really moved Villanova all the way down to number 8 by putting them against the overall number one Kansas in the South region. And it played out that way. Villanova had an amazing year, but a trip up late to Seton Hall, put them in a very difficult spot to potentially have to face Kansas, and here they are facing them. So overall, I wouldn't change anything right now because the bracket, who Villanova's played, we're waking up tomorrow, we're playing for a trip to the Final Four. So I wouldn't change anything right now because if we had beaten Seton Hall, maybe it would have been a different bracket. Maybe somebody would upset us. Who knows? I just love the fact that this team always looks at next game. They don't look back. They don't look forward. They are locked in on the task at hand, and that all starts with Arcidiacono, who sets that tone for the entire team.
He really does, and there was a time they were up early in that game, and then Miami does what they do, shooting the threes. It kind of got them back in, but the pressure that Villanova put on, and there was a couple steals at half court there, and they just were determined that, yeah, you're coming back, but the resiliency that they showed right in the end of that first half and into the early second half, they just did not allow Miami to have any thought of getting back into that game because Miami was, 9 of 15 in the first half, but 7 of 20 in the second half on contested field goals. So I thought, as you just mentioned, their resiliency on defense was just outrageous last night.
Yeah, and on that note, I thought the biggest moment of the game, and it was a subtle moment, maybe people don't feel this way, but I do, when Villanova was up 29-14, up 15, and Miami went on the 16-2 run to get it to 31-30, only down one after those 4 threes they made and then scored a couple other points on that 16-2 run. Villanova quickly answered with a 7-0 run to go up 38-30 after the Canes had got to within one. And at that moment, I just knew we were going to win the game because I felt like this is why you play 2-3 seed matchups in the Sweet 16 because teams are not going to go away. They're going to fight back. And then when we counterpunched with that short 7-0 run, I just knew it. I knew that it was going to be our night. And then in the second half, we just broke them. It reminded me very much of when Villanova beat Duke in 2009, the last time we played in the Sweet 16. It was close at halftime, and Villanova just ran Duke out in the second half. Villanova beat Duke by 23 in that game in the Sweet 16. They won last night by 23 against Miami. It was almost an identical game. And then that set up 2 days later that epic battle that came down to Scotty Reynolds' shot to beat Pitt. With less than a second to go to propel the Wildcats to the Final Four. And on paper, the level of that Pitt Villanova game, it lived up to it and even more. And that's what I'm saying tomorrow. I mean, you just look at it. Villanova blew out UCLA in the round of 32 in 2009, blew out Duke in the round of 16, and then they got to Pitt, the 1 seed, and they needed everything to barely win with less than a second to go. So, this game tomorrow is just off the charts. It's why you just love being around college basketball.
Can't wait for it. It's tomorrow night right here on 97.3 ESPN. Villanova, by the way, shooting 59.9% on field goals in this tournament. They have a chance to break the record for the highest field goal percentage in a single NCAA tournament. That's unbelievable the way that they've been shooting. Can they continue tomorrow night against Kansas, number 1 versus number 2? Ryan Fannon, the voice of the Villanova Wildcats. Thanks, pal.
Great being with you guys. Bring on the Jayhawks.